Hey everybody, today I'm going to take you on a wild adventure into the mountains. But before we get started, my wife wanted to know why I was wearing this hat. I always wear this hat out in the mountains. She said, "Why do you have to turn the brim up?" I say, "I am trying to increase my peripheral vision." So anyway, you are going to be amazed by this story.
Bulle the Kid.
So back in 2005, 20 years ago, I was invited by some friends to go explore something that was very interesting in the mountains of New Mexico. So we traveled on a dirt road far back in the mountains. We went up in elevation, and I didn't quite know what to expect. But we got there, and there was this little cave, and you had to kind of squat down to get in it. And we took rowboats into this cave. We drug the boats through some tunnels. Some parts of it were widened, almost like a mine. And then when we got to this one area, it was really dark and expansive. And we had ropes, and we lowered two rowboats down a massive drop off of stalactites. And when we got the boats lowered down, they were in a big lake inside of this mountain. This area in New Mexico is not lush. It's not super rainy. So I had never seen anything like this before. But here we were, and we got in these rowboats, and we're in a lake in a mountain, and we were surrounded by some of the most beautiful, colorful stalactites that I had ever seen in my life. Also, we would look down into the crystal clear water, and you could see a long ways down. It was a very undisturbed lake, no algae, and it was very cold. So we rowed across the lake and got out of the boats, and we went through a series of tunnels because those who had gone before me were able to kind of map out a way to get out the other side of the mountain. The interesting thing was I just happened to have a camera. Back in the day, there wasn't GoPros. It was just, I got a kind of an expensive camera. I could get wet. And so I snapped some pictures, and we started going through these tunnels, and we were in water, sometimes up to our chest and sometimes even higher than that. And then there was one stretch where the water and the ceiling, the cave ceiling, were only that far apart. And so I had to lay back and breathe as my whole body was in this really cold water. And we made it through that. And then there was a series of tunnels and passages and drop-offs, just covered with stalactites all the way. And I was really surprised. When you look at stalactites, you think they're slippery, but they're not. They're actually really sticky, like kind of like a cat's tongue or sandpaper. When you feel them, they are abrasive. And so we continued on for a very long way back through this narrow cavern into the mountain to try to get to the exit. And when we got to the very end, there was a portion of it that didn't work for me. And the reason for that is because everybody who was with me seemed like they were vegetarians and vegans and all that, and they were pretty thin. And, I got a little bit more chest. And so we went to this one area before you can get out of the mountain where the floor of the cave was here and the ceiling of the cave was here. And you had to lay on your back and slide yourself along. And it got so narrow that every one of us, when we're laying back, we had to turn our head because you couldn't have your nose up or it would rub on the ceiling of this giant slab. Now, it was pretty wide. It was maybe 10 feet wide, but like I said, it was just that far apart the whole way across it. And you can almost see some daylight out the other side if you just make it that far. So I was pushing myself through, and I found out that now I got to the point my chest muscles were touching the ceiling and I was on my back. And I started to realize that I'm going to be in real bad trouble if I get stuck in this thing, because I wouldn't be able to breathe. Your chest couldn't rise up and down anymore. I'd be just wedged in there. I mean, the only thing I could have potentially done to get through that section is to get naked, oil myself up, and have them pull me through with a rope. But other than that, I was just too big. And so I let the guys know that I am not going to do this. And in my mind, it was really about breathing. And so they argued a little bit. Oh, come on, you can do it. And of course they all looked anorexic, and they made it through. But I made the decision. I said, guys, I'm gonna go all the way back. And they're thinking, well, you're gonna do that alone? And I said, yeah, I got a light. I'm just gonna do that. It was more important to me to breathe than it was for me to spend another half hour to 45 minutes working my way back through the cavern to get to the lake. So they said okay, and I said, I'll meet you guys outside of the mountain. So I ended up backtracking and going back up everything and through everything and crawling here and there and going it back in the water. And all I had was just a headlamp on. I didn't have a flashlight, I just had a headlamp. And I went all the way back by myself and got to the lake after going in that one tunnel where the water is this far from the ceiling. And I was laying back. I got all the way back to the lake. And by that time I was freezing. And I got in one of the rowboats and I rowed all the way across the lake. And then the next tricky part was I had to hand climb up this rope back up about 30 feet to where I can get back into the tunnels to leave. But I did all that. It was a huge challenge, but for me, it was well worth it because I didn't want to be one of the stupid people wedged into a cave. And so I made it outside, met up with everybody. They were amazed that I went and did that by myself in the dark, but that's what I needed to do. And I would have to say that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's a very unknown place. I've had to tell some people, I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but it was well worth it. And that has been an amazing thing in my life that I like to think back about, is exploring something hardly anybody has ever seen. And just on a side note, when someone first discovered the cave, in that lake, there was a Membree's pot laying in there from the Native Americans back in the 1300s. And it was down in the bottom of that lake when they first discovered it. And I was just thinking how hard that would have been in the 1300s to crawl up through all of that to go get water. That was amazing. I'm amazed they did that. But I imagine during severe drought, you you do what you've got to do. So anyway, that's the story. Till next time, catch you later.